What if everything you believe about yourself is the very thing that keeps you trapped? What if the path to true awakening isn't about adding more knowledge or achieving some spiritual status, but rather about unlearning the falsehoods you've unknowingly embraced? In the words of Alan Watts, you are under the impression that there is something wrong with you, and that's exactly what keeps you from waking up. We live in a world that constantly tells us who we should be. From the moment we're born, we're taught to build an identity, to become someone, to succeed, to achieve, to be recognized. We're handed names, labels, roles, and expectations, and we carry them like armor, believing that this is what makes us real, valuable, or worthy. But deep down, there's a quiet voice, one that whispers late at night, a subtle nudge that says, there's something more, something beyond the noise, something beyond the mask. That's where awakening begins, not in finding something new, but in remembering what was always there. It's a return to presence, a return to stillness. But there's a catch. There are traps along the way, invisible traps, beautifully seductive illusions that the ego sets up to keep you asleep while convincing you that you're becoming more awake. These traps are subtle. They speak in your voice. They pretend to be your truth. And that's what makes them so dangerous. In this video, we'll explore 7 of the most common and deceptive traps of the ego. These aren't random behaviors or bad habits. These are deeply rooted psychological mechanisms that most people mistake for personal growth, self-awareness, or even enlightenment. Alan Watts spent his life illuminating these patterns, not with dogma, but with insight, humor, and clarity. His words continue to echo in the minds of those willing to question everything they've been taught. Let me give you a small taste of what's to come. One of the traps we'll explore is the belief that I must fix myself. It sounds noble. It sounds like progress. But what if that very idea, that you are broken and need fixing, is the illusion itself? What if trying to improve is the ego's way of staying in charge? Another trap whispers, you are what others think of you. It feeds off praise and withers in silence. It has you performing rather than living. But awakening requires authenticity, not approval. It demands that you let go of who you think you should be and step into who you already are. The ego is clever. It doesn't show up wearing a sign that says, I am your trap. It shows up as a voice of reason, a planner, a perfectionist, a victim, a teacher, a protector. It can speak with the tone of love or with the harshness of self-judgment. It can masquerade as spiritual awakening while keeping you locked in a deeper sleep. That's why recognizing these traps is so important. Because once you see them clearly, they lose their power. This isn't about ego bashing. Your ego isn't evil. It's just outdated. It was built to protect you. But it doesn't know how to surrender. It doesn't understand unity, peace, or presence. Its job is to keep you in survival mode. But you weren't born to merely survive. You were born to remember, to awaken, to live fully. Alan Watts once said, trying to awaken by effort is like trying to smooth out water with a flat iron. The more you do, the worse it gets. The real path is not a doing, but an undoing. Not a becoming, but a letting go. So, in the next few minutes, I'll walk with you through these 7 traps. And as we explore each one, I invite you to reflect, not with guilt, not with shame, but with deep curiosity. If you're here watching this, chances are something in you already knows. Something is ready. Something is remembering. So stay with me, breathe, listen with your whole being, because the truth has always been simple, and it's waiting for you to see it. Now, before we move on, I have a simple question for you. What do you believe is the most common way the ego keeps people asleep in today's world? I'd love to hear your insight in the comments below. Your words might help someone else awaken too. The biggest ego trap I see today is mistaking performance for presence. Feel free to copy that, or write your own version in the comments. Let's start this journey together. Let's begin with the first ego trap, one that almost everyone falls into without realizing. The belief that I am what I do. This is one of the most seductive illusions the ego creates. It tells you that your value comes from your actions, your productivity, your results. That your worth is measured by how much you achieve, how hard you work, or how successful you appear to be. In a world driven by ambition and performance, this belief can seem natural, even noble. But Alan Watts warned about this confusion between doing and being. He said, "You are not a machine. You do not need to justify your existence by constant output. You are here to be, to dance, to flow." The trap is that when your identity becomes wrapped around what you do, then any failure, any pause, any rest feels like losing yourself. You begin to fear stillness. You fear slowing down. Because deep inside, you believe that without doing, you are nothing. This trap keeps people locked in a cycle of overwork and burnout. It breeds anxiety, restlessness, and even depression. And worst of all, it distances you from your true nature. Because who you are is not a job title. It's not your productivity score. It's not even your purpose. You are not the role you play. You are the awareness behind the role. The ocean, not just the wave. Have you ever noticed how children don't need to justify their existence? They don't wake up thinking, "What do I need to do to be worthy today?" They play. They explore. They live in the moment. That's not immaturity. That's clarity. That's freedom. And it's what we lose when the ego convinces us we need to prove something to the world. Now let's move into the second trap. The belief that I must fix myself. This trap is especially dangerous because it wears the costume of self-improvement. It feels empowering. It tells you that growth is good, that healing is necessary, that you need to be better, stronger, more spiritual, more disciplined, more something. On the surface, it sounds wise. But underneath, there is a subtle poison. The idea that you are broken. Alan Watts once said, "The reason you want to be better is the reason why you aren't." It's not that healing or growth are bad. It's that the starting point is already rooted in lack. It's the belief that who you are in this moment is not enough, that something is wrong with you. And the moment you believe that, you hand your power over to the ego. The ego thrives on the illusion of progress. It loves to measure how much better you are today than yesterday. It creates an endless to-do list of emotional upgrades and spiritual checklists. It whispers, "Keep going, you're almost there." But the destination never arrives. Because awakening isn't about becoming more. It's about realizing that you were always whole. Imagine standing in front of a mirror and seeing a spot on your face. You begin scrubbing the mirror, hoping it will fix the reflection. That's what this trap does. It makes you think the problem is out there or in the future. It keeps you distracted from the truth that the peace you seek is already within you. This doesn't mean you shouldn't evolve, grow, or change. Life is change, but true transformation comes from awareness, not judgment. From presence, not pressure. When you begin to witness your patterns without needing to fix them, they begin to dissolve on their own. The ego doesn't like this. It wants to stay in control. It wants a plan, a timeline, a guarantee. It can't stand the idea of surrender. But that's exactly what awakening asks of you. To let go of the need to fix yourself, to sit in the silence of your own being, and to remember, you were never broken in the first place. So take a moment. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you allowed yourself to simply be without the compulsion to do or improve? When was the last time you trusted that you were already enough? These two traps are everywhere. They are the foundation of modern society's definition of success and self-worth. But now that you see them, you can begin to step out of them. In the next section, we'll dive even deeper into the traps that involve other people, the mirror of social approval and the race of comparison. Are you starting to see these traps in your own life? If so, let's reflect together. I've been chasing improvement without realizing I was already enough. This really opened my eyes. If that resonates with you, feel free to copy and paste it into the comments below. Or write your own reflection. Your words might help someone else begin their own awakening. Now that we've explored the ego's attachment to doing and fixing, let's move into a more complex and socially entangled dimension of the ego, the part that constantly looks outward for validation, the part that doesn't just want to be, but wants to be seen in a certain way. This is where the next two traps lie. and they are both deeply woven into our culture, our upbringing, and even our unconscious habits. Trap number 3 is the belief that I am what others think of me. This one is powerful because it begins early. As children, we learn quickly what pleases others. We learn how to gain love, attention, and praise. We learn that being good earns smiles and that being bad brings punishment. Slowly, often without knowing, we start shaping ourselves to fit what others expect. We become performers, masks over masks, layers of identity built on approval. Alan Watts once said, "We are not who we think we are. We are not even who others think we are. We are who we think others think we are." Let that sink in. This is not just a trap of perception, it is a trap of projection. We begin living not from who we truly are, but from who we imagine we need to be in someone else's eyes. And in a world shaped by social media, curated images, and public opinions, this trap is stronger than ever. You may start measuring your worth by how many likes you get, how many people praise you, or how admired you are by peers. But the moment your self-image depends on another person's reaction, you've handed over your inner peace. You've given the ego control, and it will constantly demand more applause to feel safe. This trap creates anxiety. It creates self-doubt. It makes you fear rejection, criticism, and even silence. But here's the paradox. The more you chase approval, the further you drift from authenticity. And true awakening only happens when you return to who you were before the world told you who to be. So how do you break free? It begins with honesty, radical honesty. Ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? Who would I be if no one needed me to perform, impress, or please? That's where your truth lives. That's where awakening begins. Now let's explore trap number 4, one that's closely related. The belief that I must win, or I am nothing. This is the ego's competition trap. The mindset that life is a race, and you must come out on top to matter. That you must outperform, outshine, or outdo others in order to be seen, respected, or loved. On the surface, competition seems normal, even healthy. Society often celebrates winners, champions, the best of the best. But hidden underneath is a toxic narrative, that your worth is dependent on comparison, that you only matter if you are better than someone else. Alan Watts challenged this idea with deep clarity. He reminded us that flowers do not compete with one another. Each blooms in its own time. The oak does not envy the pine. The sun does not race the moon. They simply are. And yet the ego fears that being ordinary is being invisible, that if you are not exceptional, you are irrelevant. This trap fuels jealousy, bitterness, and burnout. It can even make you resent the success of others. You begin to see life as a scoreboard, where someone else's gain feels like your loss. But awakening is not a game to win. It is a space to return to. And that space is not found through comparison, but through connection. When you let go of the need to compete, something magical happens. You begin to celebrate others without feeling small. You begin to move at your own pace. You begin to breathe again. And in that breath you feel your soul, free, unburdened, alive. Both of these traps, approval and comparison, are deeply rooted in fear. The fear of not being enough, the fear of being unseen. But the truth is, you were never meant to be a copy of someone else. You were never meant to win a race that doesn't exist. You were born to express, not to impress. You were born to be, not to compete. So take a moment to ask yourself, am I living for my truth, or for someone else's perception of me? The answer might reveal more than you expect. I'm learning to stop performing for others and just be who I truly am. If that resonates with you, feel free to copy it into the comments. Or write your own reflection. Your voice might be the mirror someone else needs today. 5. I am separate. 6. Letting go means losing control. These ideas explore the ego's illusion of separation and its fear of surrender. As we continue our journey through the ego's traps, we arrive at two of its most persistent illusions. These are not only beliefs, they are felt experiences that shape the way we live, love, and move through the world. The first is the belief that I am separate, and the second is the fear that letting go means losing control. Both are deeply embedded in the structure of the ego, and both hold you back from waking up to your true nature. Let's start with trap number 5, the belief that I am separate. This illusion is the foundation of ego. It whispers that you are a distinct, isolated being living inside your body, apart from everything else. It says you are not the tree, not the river, not the bird, not the breeze. You are something different, something alone, something other. Alan Watts challenged this idea with beautiful clarity. He taught that separation is not real. It is a mental construct. He once said, "You are the universe experiencing itself. The real you is not a puppet that life pushes around. The real you is the whole universe." Let that sink in. You are not in the world. You are the world. Not in some poetic, metaphorical way, but in the truest sense. Your breath is the breath of trees. Your heartbeat is the rhythm of life. Your body is made of stardust and ocean. There is no boundary where you end and the rest begins, except in your mind. The ego, however, thrives on the illusion of separation. It says, "This is mine. That is yours. This is me. That is them." It creates duality. It creates conflict. It builds walls. It says, "Protect yourself. Defend yourself. Prove yourself." And so we spend our lives feeling cut off, disconnected, afraid. But it's an illusion. The moment you see through it, even for a second, you feel something astonishing. You feel unity. You feel peace. You feel home. This leads us into the 6th trap, the belief that letting go means losing control. The ego is obsessed with control. It wants to manage every outcome, predict every future, and hold tight to every expectation. It believes that if it doesn't grip tightly enough, everything will fall apart. That chaos will take over, that you will be unsafe. But the truth is, control is an illusion, and letting go is not the same as giving up. In fact, letting go is the beginning of real freedom. Alan Watts compared life to a river. He said we often try to swim upstream, struggling against the current of what is. But true peace comes when you learn to float, when you surrender to the flow, not because you are weak, but because you finally trust that life knows what it's doing. Surrender does not mean passivity. It doesn't mean you stop making decisions or taking action. It means you stop resisting reality. You stop forcing. You stop clinging. You begin to trust. And that trust transforms everything. Many people think that if they let go, they'll lose themselves. But the opposite is true. It's in the letting go that you actually find yourself. Because what you're holding on to is often the very thing that's keeping you small, anxious, and asleep. This trap is often most visible during times of uncertainty, when plans fall apart, when relationships change, when the future feels unclear. The ego panics. It says, "Do something, fix it, control it." But the deeper voice, the voice of the soul, whispers something else. It says, "Breathe, let it unfold. You are safe here, even now." The ego cannot hear that voice. It only understands effort and struggle. But awakening invites you into softness, into presence, into trust. Letting go is not the end of power. It is the beginning of real power. Because once you stop resisting what is, you begin to live in harmony with life itself. And life is always on your side. So ask yourself this: where in your life are you gripping too tightly? Where are you resisting the flow? What would happen if, just for a moment, you loosened your hold and allowed? I'm learning that letting go isn't losing control. It's gaining peace. If that resonates with you, feel free to share it in the comments or write your own reflection. Your insight may help someone else take that first brave step toward surrender. We've now arrived at the final and perhaps most deceptive trap of the ego. It's the one that hides in plain sight, disguising itself as your inner voice, your logic, your identity. It is the belief that I am my thoughts. This illusion is so widespread that most people never question it. They assume that every thought that enters their mind is real, that every inner comment is true, and that every story their brain creates must be trusted. But Alan Watts warned against this illusion. He taught that the mind is a marvelous servant, but a terrible master. When you identify with your thoughts, you become a prisoner of them. You become stuck in a never-ending stream of noise that keeps you from hearing the silence underneath. And that silence is where your true self lives. The ego uses thought as its primary tool. It speaks through judgments, comparisons, doubts, fears, and fantasies. It tells you who you are, who you should be, who others are, what you lack, what you must do to be accepted, and why you are not enough. And because the voice sounds like your own, you believe it. But here's the truth. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it. Let that sink in. You are the awareness behind the thought, the witness, the stillness observing the storm. And when you begin to separate yourself from thought, even slightly, you start to wake up. You start to see clearly. You start to live from a place of presence rather than reaction. Alan Watts used the metaphor of muddy water. He said that water becomes clear not by stirring it, but by leaving it alone. In the same way, your mind becomes clear not by overthinking, but by stepping back and allowing it to settle. The final trap of the ego tells you to overanalyze, to ruminate, to control every outcome through thought. But freedom begins when you stop identifying with the content of the mind and begin resting in the space that holds it all. So how do you do that? You start by noticing, by watching, by being curious. When a thought arises, ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this mine? You don't need to fight the thought. Just notice it, let it pass, and return to the present moment. That is the path out of this trap. Now let's quickly revisit the 7 traps of the ego that keep you from waking up. I am what I do. The belief that your worth is based on your productivity and achievement. I must fix myself. The illusion that you are broken and need constant improvement. I am what others think of me. The trap of living for validation and approval. I must win, or I am nothing. The pressure to compete and compare. I am separate. The illusion that you are alone and disconnected from life. Letting go means losing control. The fear of surrendering to the flow of life. I am my thoughts. The belief that your mental chatter defines who you are. Each of these traps is subtle. Each wears a mask of logic, ambition, or even spirituality. But behind each one is fear. And behind the fear is your freedom. You don't need to destroy the ego to wake up. You only need to see through its illusions, to recognize that you are more than what you do, more than what you think, more than what others see. You are not a role, a name, or a belief. You are awareness itself, consciousness unfolding, a wave in the ocean of existence. So where do you go from here? You go inward. You become still. You listen. You observe. And in that quiet space, you begin to remember what the ego made you forget, that you were never lost. You only needed to wake up. If something in this journey has stirred you, if even one trap resonated, then share that insight below. Not just for yourself, but for the countless others walking this path too. Awakening may feel personal, but it's also collective. Your voice matters. Realizing I am not my thoughts was the most freeing moment of all. Feel free to copy that into the comments if it speaks to you, or write your own truth. You never know who your words will reach.